So first, thanks for coming out, of course. You guys have a good time so far? Yeah?
Yes.
Have you attended any of the festivities? Yeah? No. This is definitely going to be participatory. So this was going to be given by a guy that was with us, Robert Bell. He's not with us anymore, so I'm here to take over his presentation. All right. So I would appreciate it if there's a little bit of participation. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to ask them. What we're talking about, when we talk about reducing downtime and minimizing costs, is pretty much the only other thing that people are focusing on is this patient care, right? I mean, patient outcomes, I should say. But who do I have? Let's see if this works. First, I am with Tri-Imaging. I've been with Tri-Imaging about 4 years. The company's been around about 5 years or so. Prior to that, I was at RCI for about 12 years. And so most of my career here has been or all of it actually has been in imaging. I've never been in the biomed field. One of the things that we're passionate about and we talk about a lot in here is training, is bringing new people into our field because of the aging. I say the aging engineer, but actually I'm him now. I mean, hate to admit it, we've been saying that for 10, 15 years and now I'm that guy. So anyway, all right, so who's in the audience today? Who do we have from in-house engineers? I need to know where to throw my jokes and where not to throw them, so that's what this is about. In-house? Okay, good. Field service? Outside of that? Okay, independence? Any management, directors, that type of thing? Anybody just wander in? I mean, if you're going to wander in, I guess you could do it in Vegas, but I doubt it would be this far outside of town, right? It would probably be a little closer to downtown. Although it is a pretty nice resort. This is the south end of the strip, I think, right? This is as far south as you can go. Anybody local? You guys are local, right? You guys here? Local? Okay. Then we're local people. All right, well, it's a good place to vacation. So we're going to talk about 5 strategies or pillars here. And what those are skills, abilities, knowledge, resources, and tools. And kind of how all of those 5 things are going to help you reduce downtime, get a better ROI on your equipment and improve patient outcomes too, right? Because a happy patient and a healthy patient is good for the facility. All right, by maximizing each of these, we're going to produce an end result that increases 3 things. Uptime of the equipment, which is very important, especially if you're it's important anyway, but if you're a manager or director, I mean, the uptime of the equipment is very important. As a matter of fact, kind of on that note, I saw there's a couple of people out here that are promoting software for remote monitoring in that. Has anybody seen that? So one of the things that I saw is not only are they monitoring to find out what errors are coming up or, to catch the system before it falls down, but also for usage. Which kind of plays into what you're doing here too. You have a CT. Anybody ever want to go work on a CT? And they say, well, you're going to have to come in at night and do that, or we don't have time for that. Every minute it's down, it's not making money. But the truth is, you look at it and you say, well, you only use it 3 times a week. So they're starting to look at more monitoring that uptime on the equipment too. There's a couple companies out here. I don't really know. I don't remember the name of them, but
Zingbox.
What was it?
Zingbox is one.
Zingbox, yeah. I think that's the new one, a couple of years old, right?
Yeah.
Second one? Yeah. I don't know how much they're actually doing. And then another company that we currently work with built their own internal software to do it. So, and then return on investment, that's another big one. How much money is the equipment producing? Because in imaging is one of the modalities that does produce revenue, right? I mean, it's a revenue generating modality. Some of them are expenses. And then customer satisfaction is the third one. All right, let's talk about uptime first. Faster response time. So what does faster response time mean? Sometimes does anybody have something where they have like a 2-hour response time? Where they have windows where they have to respond, right? Just about everybody does now. Faster response time does lead to faster uptime, right? The sooner you're on site, hopefully the sooner you can fix it. A more informed response, that's a big one. we'll talk about it more later, but a more informed response, know what you're getting into before you get there if possible. And a lot of that is, a lot of times they just call and say it's broke, but other times you can get more information from them, details. I can tell you on most of the tech support that I do, by the time we actually get down to what's going on, you get like 4 or 5 different stories, right? And the final one has most of the details in it and leads you to a totally different result than you would have got if you just took off on the first thing the guy said or he or she said. Does that make sense? Yes? All right. You guys are, I don't know. All right, reduce troubleshooting time. Same thing. You can reduce troubleshooting time by a number of things, by having training on the system or having good communication with whoever's on site or having some help or having the right tools. This last one shot, one kill troubleshooting, man, we see a lot of that now, right? Send anything that could be wrong with it so that there's no extra time that this system is down. I mean, we do that. We'll send out hero kits. And, we're happy to do it. It makes the engineer look good. He gets the system up. The facility is happy. The system is up and running. I remember years ago that we used to do this a lot, these hero kits in one modality specifically. Does anybody have an idea what that might have been? Ultrasound. Exactly right. With ultrasound, we would send out just a kit with just a bunch of boards in it, and they would just flip them out. They'd have 2 or 3 of the same, or 4 of the same front end boards, and then send a package with everything else, and they would just switch it out and get it up and running. But now we see it with us as a company. We see it in our imaging modalities too, because they don't want the system down. They just want it up. So it makes it a little harder on the engineer. So one shot, one kill troubleshooting, we call it, or somebody made that up. Probably made that up. But not here. Next one is higher return on investment. So these systems nowadays, these things are expensive. Like I had an MR done, and it's crazy what I've had to pay for it before insurance even took over, right? And then I had to pay for the doctor, and you all are familiar. You have to pay for everything that goes along with it. So these numbers came from health.costhelper.com, and I went and looked at that before I came in here today to see if they were accurate. According to that, they were fairly accurate, and it was last year's information. So could be more, it could be less, but if you're paying $200 to $1,000 for an X-ray, all the way up to the cath, and the cath, over $30,000, I don't know. I guess that has to be for a really big procedure. But the point is the same. This is per patient, So if this is per patient, how many patients can you do on a CT in an hour? Yeah, how many? A really good facility. 10? Okay. 10, 8, okay, let's just say it was 4. Let's make it every 15 minutes, right? You're rolling somebody in and out every 15 minutes. Multiply that by 15 minutes by, say, 8 hours a day, by 5 days a week, you get it, right? It doesn't take long. It also tells you why these systems were being replaced so quickly with new technology and why that seems to be, to us, that's slowing down. And I say that based on what our business does, right? You can kind of tell. Maybe because it has something to do with reimbursements, but it's expensive. So a higher return on investment is going to be another reason that you want to have all of these strategies or pillars in place to be successful. Any comments on that? Those numbers look fairly accurate. Any idea? Does anybody know if those numbers are accurate? I could have put anything up here, huh? That's awesome. All right, higher customer satisfaction. That's both yours and theirs. So we have a couple sets of customers, right? When we go into the facility, our customer is the facility, and the facility's customer is the end user. Both of those are going to have higher satisfaction rates. If we have increased patient throughput, decreased appointment wait times is another big one. Has anybody ever walked out on an appointment because they kept you waiting so long? Anybody ever done that? Good. I want to make sure I'm not the only one. I've done that. And I've told them that my time is just as important as yours, and they said, reschedule. I don't know if they really cared, but I have done that. And I wasn't very happy with them. So increased confidence in your department and reputation, that's another big one, right? That's another big one. If you go in there and you don't have the knowledge, the skills, the tools, the resources, or whatever you need to fix the customer, which a lot of times we are fixing the customer, not just fixing the equipment. Everybody agree with that? Would you rather have a super tech engineer, or would you rather have somebody that's pretty good tech with some help maybe, but he can fix that customer or she? What would you rather have? Fix the customer? Would anybody rather just have the tech? The engineer? Nobody? Okay. Because that's usually going to be, in the end, you're going to lose that way. We all know some really good engineers with not very interpersonal skills, right? So, the end result of this is going to reduce overall cost, which is big. That's really what it's all about. Maybe not for you, but for your managers and your directors and everybody else. All right, so let's look at these pillars. So the first, there's 5 of them. There's knowledge, tools, or skills, tools, abilities, and resources. And where these come from, in the military, when we used to teach these 5 things, these were 5 things, points that we always had to get across. And all of the topics that we were talking about fell into one of these 5 categories: knowledge, skills, tools, ability, and resources. And we would lay these things out, and that's where all of your topics fell under. And today they still do. They make pretty good sense. So without all of these pillars or things in place, this is what happens right here. The roof caves in. You'll make it for a little while. Sometimes you make it for a long while, but something suffers. Your reputation suffers. Your customer suffers. Your ROI is not good. I mean, does anybody ever have any of those problems? You find out you don't have a really good return on your equipment, or your engineer. Maybe your engineer is a piece of your equipment, right? You don't have a very good return on your engineer. That's a problem too. But if any of these are weak, you could have a chance of that roof caving in. They made a song about that, but I'm not sure about this crowd. So, first one is knowledge. And the definition is the information known by a person from studying or gaining experience. He has a lot of knowledge on the topic. All right? So, there's a lot of places that we can get knowledge. We can get it from training. We can get it from experience. Right? Sometimes experience is more important than training. Some people that they may be really educated, but they don't really have a lot of common sense. Trust your training, instincts, and experience when you're going in to do things. That's important. But this one right here is also important. Knowing your limits, right? Be willing to move outside of those, but know your limits. And, the job can be daunting. I don't know. Okay, there's a lot that goes into it. I don't know if I find it daunting. So how do we get this knowledge? First thing we do is we gain familiarity with the systems. I'll give you an example of that. So when I was working at RSTI, I was up there for about 12 years. I didn't do a lot of service during that time, other than internal on our own equipment. We did a lot of training on our equipment. Pretty much then, it was just training. But to gain familiarity with the systems, by training on those systems for that long of a time, there's varied systems. I taught on a lot of different things. When I left that facility and I started servicing equipment, I had the knowledge to go service that equipment based on the familiarity that I had with all of those systems that I was working on. Does that make sense? So another way to look at that is you're at your facilities and there's equipment there that isn't being used. Gain familiarity on that system before you have to go in there and troubleshoot what's going on with that system. Right? Does anybody ever do that? Do you guys ever go to a piece of equipment that isn't broke? No? Yeah? I mean, if you got the time to do that, that's a really good thing. If you look at manuals, I mean, you are engineers, right? If you look at manuals, I know you don't like that, but that kind of stuff helps you out when you go in to work on that system. And feel free to chime in, you guys. Don't be shy. We'll be done in 30 minutes if nobody talks. All right, build a rapport with your technologist and the department as a whole. That's another big one. That's those interpersonal skills that I'm talking about, so that when you do talk to the technologist, they give you the information that you want. Or when you have a rapport with them, they're working with you instead of against you, is what I would say about that. They're working with you instead of against you. If you go in there and they're hot at you, that's a lot different than if you go in there and they're looking at you as coming in there to help them. Because most of the time you're not seeing them unless something is wrong, right? So go see them when something's right. It's a little harder for this. These types of things can be a little harder on your independent service organizations. It can be a little harder then because you're kind of putting out fires all the time. That's what you do. You're not delivering care to the people that you see all the time. You're kind of putting out fires. So it's a little bit harder there. But people like y'all that your customers are in-house, or you know what I mean, normal facilities that you see, develop a rapport with them. It's probably just as important or more important with people you don't see all the time, actually, but it's just harder to do. Gain some knowledge from on-the-job training and effective training. So on-the-job training we see that a lot. A lot of people that haven't gone to school on a system, but they've been working with whoever their lead engineer is, right? Yeah, we brought this guy up to the ranks. Well, right now, I think it's fair to say that we don't have a lot of people. Does anybody here have a lot of young people that they're bringing into this field right now? I mean, it's hard. You do? That's good. I'm really happy to hear that because, we've talked about that for a long time now, and bringing those young engineers into this field is hard right now. There's a lot of the older engineers, but not such a great supply of the new ones. We're changing that, though.
Yeah, we just had 5 guys retired in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean.
Retired in some newbies, but they've been hard to find.
Is that 5 guys, 5 experienced guys, right?
Like 35 years and more in the field.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It really hurt.
Yeah.
Then you get a couple of guys, attrition, just find other opportunities, and that made things really challenging this last year.
We'll talk to this a little bit later on about this. We're doing this apprentice program where we're bringing these young guys in at a biomedical school, and we're apprenticing them so that they leave our facility like 4 months later, and they're higher level of knowledge and skills and abilities than somebody brand new, but they still need some training, but they're ready to go do some work at that point.
I'm on the advisory board for the local tech college.
Yeah.
And we get an intern out of them for a whole school year.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about it recently. In the last 10 years, we've hired 8 of those interns that we've had. We've got a couple that, obviously didn't have it, but we hired 8 of those guys. So
yeah, that's great.
That's been a good return for our department because the work we put into them when we got done, mm-hmm. We have been fortunate where we've grown where we could bring them in and start them at a junior level.
But you're still starting them at a junior level. It would have been nice to have those senior engineers in there and be training these juniors as you go. Does anybody else do that, just out of curiosity? Or does anybody else have a hard time hiring at all? No? Does anybody do any hiring? Let me ask you that. Let me back in.
It's just that most of them come from the biomed background, mm-hmm. and they want to rush through things. And I'm from the old school. You take the time for the imaging, you rush through it, it's going to cost you in the end. And I mean, they don't know about getting into it, but slow down, learn the theory behind it. Go to RCI, go to one of the classes, mm-hmm. 4 pages, and get the theory down, then rush in. I mean, come on.
It's a whole different game now where we used to have all, when I came into the field, imaging engineers came in as imaging engineers, and that's all they ever did. And biomed, BMETs did BMET equipment, and that's all they ever did. It's about 100, not 100%, but pretty close to everybody we see now coming into imaging are BMETs moving into imaging.
Well, and some of that has to do with the disparity in pay. I don't know any organizations out there that pay their general biomeds the same that they pay their imaging engineers.
Right. I came from the BMET world in imaging.
Right. And so a lot of them, like, what's that?
A lot of BMETs still want to do the work for imaging.
We don't want to get into that argument.
Well, so I've got 70. Well, I have 70 techs in the system, and we have 17 imaging engineers. And I've got techs on the general biomed side that have been in the organization for 30, 35 years. Mm-hmm. And since we've started our imaging program 6 years ago, I've got guys with 25, 30 years that want to move into imaging because of that disparity in pay. And it's getting them through. I mean, we sent a younger tech that's on the general biomed side down to you guys on that transitional program, mm-hmm. To get them up to speed on that, because I can build, in my opinion anyways, I can build an imaging engineer easier from a guy that has 20 years of biomed experience or 10 years of biomed experience, I can get them up to speed on the imaging side quicker than I can bringing somebody fresh out of school and putting them right into imaging. Because they've got a troubleshooting
Well, they're familiar with the
mindset, they're
environment.
familiar with the environment,
Yeah.
they're absolutely.
Yeah, I agree
But
with
it's that crossover and getting them there. Instead of hiring them straight into that and just throwing them in there, it's getting them that training to cross over.
Yeah, and part of that is pay. I mean, imaging engineers were generally paid more than the biomeds, and I think part of it is the facilities too realize they can take the biomedical engineer, make him an imaging engineer, and not have to perhaps pay him quite as much as they would have had to pay a new imaging engineer, right? But you give him a roadmap of where he can go too. It's like you're not topped out at your being a BMed. So that, and you do that through on-the-job training and effective training, and you can also begin to build your support network. So we all know that you can't do this alone, so you need to have a support network. You need to have, that, can I call a friend, right? I did it all the time. But when I left and started servicing equipment for about a year, and I was just doing, my first call was like a Siemens Axiom Artist a cath lab detector. And it was always something expensive because even though the facility maybe had somebody trained on it, they didn't want to take the chance on replacing the high dollar component. So the tubes, the detectors, the expensive things are what they would call on. So I would go in and replace that detector, but talking to the support network, the first one that I did, I crashed the system. I'm not going to lie. I couldn't remember how to turn it off. I had to put the cursor up into the corner and I dropped down the menu and I couldn't remember that, so I turned it off at the imaging box. Because the guy who was sold the detector was there with me and I didn't want to look bad. So, when it came back up, it wouldn't come up. And I had to phone a friend, say, hey, what's going on here? I don't know what I did. And, he told me I probably crashed the database and how to go in and do it, right? So then again, I looked like a hero and I really wasn't. But it looked like it because I could phone a friend. So it's always really important to have that phone a friend. It really is. And those friends need to be good at different modalities and manufacturers. So knowledge, training. So there's two types of training, and we were just kind of hitting on this. There's basic, which is just learning the skill set of what we do. And there's advanced, where you take ownership in the equipment. So that basic type, where the first thing that you would do is that first call, first look type of training that you would get doing a BMET imaging course or phase 1 or wherever you decide to go do it, right? And that's just first look. And that's really a good thing that these biomeds can do because it's just a matter of, most of it is switches and relays and all of that first call kind of stuff. And then the second one is to take ownership, advanced training, and that's going to be more where you go towards the specialized training or the product specific training. So all of you guys that like Desert out there, right? With Desert Technologies, right? Yep. All right, you guys all have to have some kind of specialized training in something, and you had to base it on some kind of general rad training, right? That's just the way it is. We all have to do the same thing. So the second set is going to be specialized in CAS, CT, Mammo, MR, nuke med, whatever it is. One way to do that is what we call road mapping. So for you guys that are bringing new people into this industry and trying to get the knowledge to them, you can road map them. If you know you need a CT engineer, you can send them to a basic class, then you can send them to a basic CT, maybe an advanced CT and product specific, and determine that roadmap before they ever get there. And that tells you the employee that they know where they're going within your organization as well. And in the end, you're getting somebody that is specific on what you need. The other side of that coin is, if you're an independent service organization, you just have to get good at a lot of different things. Or pick one, and that one seems to be hard to get by. The second thing is CEUs and conferences like this one here. So CEUs are good if you are a BMET, you have to get certified with your CEUs, right? You have to recertify or get, how many do you have to get? Like 30 in 3 years or something like that? That's quite a few to keep your certification, right? These conferences should give you a little bit bigger picture of the field that you're working in, and one of the best things about it is you get networking with people that may have found a better way to do the same thing that you're doing, or maybe you have a better way to help them out with what they're doing. we have a pretty small community, so, staying in that network, I feel like is pretty important. And then understand and embrace change. And where that's coming from is Robert was a CBET most of his career. Robert's the guy who was supposed to be here doing this. He was a CBET most of his career. So a lot of what he thought about was geared towards a CBET or a biomed into imaging. And one of the things that we talked about a lot are these certifications coming down the road for us in imaging, right? It makes sense that someday there's going to be an imaging certification, not like a CREST maybe, but something like that, where you're going to have to recertify for that on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, did anybody sit through on Dale's CREST review? Anybody do that? Okay. That test is supposed to be changing in April, right? Hopefully they're updating it quite a bit. Because if they're not, then the only way not the only way, but it's hard to pass that test if you're not a BMAT. Because there's a lot of that CREST test that is focused on what that BMAT does. So hopefully they gear that a little bit towards imaging. But we are going to see certifications coming down in the future. They're starting to now. Amy's starting to help with that. I don't know what that is down there. Is that a brain?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a gold brain holding a wrench. I like it. Okay, so understand the cost. Understand your cost, right? So the OEM cost, understand what they pay for these different modalities, different systems, the maintenance difference in the different systems. You can't really succeed without that. So whether you're a manager or an engineer or a third party, you have to understand what the costs are and what it really costs when a piece of equipment is down. What types of things do you have to take into account? What do you think when a piece of equipment is down? You have the patient cost, right? They can't run a patient through it. You also have the cost of the actual service event, right? You have the cost of the service engineer that has to go do it, the cost of the parts to bring it back up, the customers that have to be rescheduled. All of that goes into that, and that makes downtime really a lot more expensive than just the equipment isn't working and we have to reschedule a patient. When's the last time somebody called in somebody to work on a CT for them? Hourly rates. What were the hourly rates? I'm afraid to ask him, but I don't want you to get upset. It's expensive, right?
I think it's $600.
$600 an hour?
No.
Wow.
Siemens has this nice new thing, all of it called managed service charge.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm out there in less than 2 days, it costs you about $3,000 right at the top of the line, but,
Wow. Has anybody else run into that?
That's called 2-hour minimum.
That's at $1,500 an hour, that 2-hour minimum I just heard. So that makes you guys, who else was the independent service organizations here? That makes it really, you guys should know that kind of stuff. That's a big deal, like when you're competing with them out there on service. That's wow. You generally keep some kind of relationship with the OEM though, right? I mean, you're not going to go 100% away from the OEM. Some may, but generally not. Are there any OEMs in here? Anybody? I mean, it's okay if you are. We don't hold it against you or anything. The difference in different systems and modalities is another big one. Just because you can work on a Siemens cath lab doesn't mean you can work on a GE cath lab, or does it? Depends on what's going on, right? I would say to you that they both work the same way, but you'll have to know software differences, things like that. But a cath lab is a cath lab, a rad room is a rad room, a floor, And I know because I've done them all. Maybe not all, but a lot of different ones. Some successful, some not so successful. It's true to say. All right, life cycle management. As the engineer, it's going to help you to know where in the life cycle the equipment is. So, example, old and antiquated equipment needs a new tube. Okay. So let's talk about that for a second. Why do you guys feel it's important to know, or do you feel it's important to know where the equipment is in the life cycle? You do feel?
I look at that before I even go to the site. How old is it? What do I think the problem is? Part-wise, what's it cost? What's our maintenance history on it? I take that into account always.
That's pretty good. Does anybody else do that?
Yeah, so downtime is a huge issue right now within our organization. So we're tracking downtime through a tiered escalation huddle process. And one of the things that we're doing, we're focusing this year on that downtime piece. So we're taking a look at all of our modalities, and we're looking at the average age of our modalities in comparison to expected life, and where we're at in that process. And then we're breaking it down even from there. So you have 60 CT scanners, and on those 60 CT scanners, I got 3 different manufacturers. So we look at the average age first by the modality, then we look at the average age by manufacturing model and where we're at, and then we try to we look at the downtime that we've got, and if it ties into any of those manufacturing models or specific devices based upon age.
Interesting. Okay, that's way in there. That's good. That's good. So would you say that what you think you're walking into can definitely be based on how old the equipment is? Maybe what the last PM said about the system, or what you're right. All of these things go into it. It's important. That's really great. You guys are way into it. But you always have been ahead of the curve. We'll throw you a little bone there. That's awesome. So here we're talking about reduction or reimbursement reduction. This is from last year, and from what I can find, I think it's fairly accurate. Things are going down. What does this tell you right here? What they're trying to do? For sure, they're trying to get rid of. For sure, analogs gone. Pretty much. Does anybody still have analog systems?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't, because of that one called computer.
CR?
Yeah, the CR. That's the only reason they got it.
I still got 2 wet processors yet.
Do you really?
Absolutely.
Oh my word.
Honestly, I haven't seen a processor in a while, and I even pulled it out of all the curriculum that we teach anymore. I don't even have it in there.
2 of our ski resort clinics.
Wow. Okay, so they're not going to get reimbursed for anything before long. The idea is to push out that older equipment, though, right? Push out older equipment and keep newer equipment in. That's what that's all about. So they reduce your reimbursement on these on things so that you have to do that. I mean, we brought in CR originally to go like a transition between analog and digital anyway. And then CR kind of grew a life of its own. And I think it grew way bigger than it was probably ever intended to be. I think it was just intended to be a go-between with analog and digital. But the point is, if you know what it is in the life cycle, you can know what you need to spend on it. What are you going to spend on it, and what you may have to do to it before you go service it. That's the point. So if you're not doing it, it's a good idea to understand where the equipment is that you have either under contract or servicing. So knowledge, a systematic understanding of life cycle management will help the engineers anticipate the customer's reaction to recommendations too. So that's an interesting thought. Customer's reaction. So if the customer knows they have an older piece of equipment, maybe they're expecting you to say, well, it needs a new tube, or it needs this or that, or maybe it's time to replace the equipment, right? Sometimes you save a lot of money just replacing the equipment as opposed to continuing to patch it up. That's a hard recommendation to make sometimes, but it's true. And you can prove that by looking at the stats that you have, or looking at the downtime of the equipment, the cost of replacement, the whole life cycle management thing. Does anybody have anything to add to that?
Well, most hospitals understand the life cycle of their equipment. They understand the age when it's 20 years, and they done made their profit off of it. But to replace it, that's when Gallman or imaging department has to get with the director and emphasize that, unless it's mandated by the government or whomever to replace the equipment, they're gonna bridge it with CR. And that's what I've been running into is, yeah, you might have that advanced text 20 years old, which you threw in the books years ago, but you thought you'd never see it again. But they have bridged that with our CR, which can work with any unit.
What about the recommendation of just upgrading it to digital plates?
Well, and I think that's where some of the analytics that we're using now within our organization is we're taking a look at when that system goes down. Some of the things we're looking at is, was there a patient on the table? Did we have to reschedule patients? when did it go down? Did it go down between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. or did it go down after that? And how long was it down? Anything that we have that's over 100 hours of downtime, we do an RCA on. And we do that RCA to make a determination. Is there some root cause analysis? So what was the root cause and of the failure that made it go down? Is there any trending that is associated with it? Did it impact patient care and treatment? So we put all those numbers together. So when we go to administration and say, you know what, this device over the past 3 years has been down this much. It was down during these hours. Here's the patient impact that it caused, and that because of the downtime, this is the revenue that we've lost associated with it. So by replacing, you spend the capital dollars to replace it, and you avoid that.
Yeah, and that's excellent. That's the far end, the best end of the spectrum, I'd say, for sure. Do they listen to you?
Yes.
That's like our database software. If I get a work order
Mm-hmm.
and I open it up, and the labor cost and the parts cost has got above 50%, I get a flag. I actually get a pop-up box that as soon as I open that work order, it says, you've exceeded XYZ. Before I even touch it, when I accept that work order, now when I walk in there, if it's a $40,000 detector or $120,000 tube or whatever it is, I already know going in where I'm at. It's like I'll go to the department head before I even get there if I know, okay, like I had a memo, I knew I had a tube go out recently. I knew the tube was getting close just based on my experience and how many shots. I got a work order, called the department head, I said, I know you need a tube on that. And she said, we can't replace it right now, we gotta put a tube in it, we're gonna have to bite the bullet, but then put it in our budget cycle.
So ahead of time, if you knew that tube was coming to end of life, did you let anybody know that?
Yep.
So
Best I can, but I was told, wait till it dies.
Yeah, no, I get that. But that's one of the things that makes us look really good is when you can tell them what's coming up and you become a part of the solution instead of just going in there when there's a problem, right? If you see a system where you think the tube is coming to end of life or something's going on, if that can get budgeted, even if it's into like the next cycle or something like that, it makes us engineers look a lot better, like a part of the solution instead of just.
I'm trying to get to that point where I could even say, I know the tube is getting close.
Yes.
Let's 6 weeks from now, let's block a day or something and get that in ahead. Not quite there yet.
So at least get it into the budgetary. Get it into the budget. Agree? So this is a little harder. What we're talking about here is a little harder to do if you're a third-party organization. It can be a little bit harder to do, but you can still get involved in that life cycle of your equipment because then you have as a third party, we do more than just maintain the equipment. We're probably the ones that are going to deinstall and install the new equipment too. So there's a lot of opportunity for you if you follow these. This is just the first pillar. If you just follow this. So the second one is skills. All right. So back to that second pillar is skills. What do you need to positively affect all of these things we were talking about, which is uptime, return on investment, and customer satisfaction? This toolbox has a lot of different things in it. So, there's a lot of different skills. You have to have management skills. Now, I almost feel like that even the engineer that's going into the room has to have a lot of these skills. Management skills, that's a big one. Communication skills is another big one. Communicating with the customer, communicating with your chain of command. I mean, all around communication. And I know that we as engineers a lot of times don't have the best communication skills. We all do in this room, but we're all there. But we all know people that don't, right? But it's not any of us. Everybody agree with that? It's not any of us. But we know people like that. Yeah. Everything sounds negative coming out of their mouth, but they don't mean it that way. I get that sometimes from somebody I know very closely. That would be my wife. Creative. You have to be creative. Being creative as an engineer can be a little difficult at times because we're not really the creative type a lot. But being creative could mean getting creative in how you fix something too, right? I mean, I carry in the back of my car, I carry some duct tape and baling wire. and a basic set of tools, carry that on my motorcycle everywhere I go. Everywhere I go, and you'd be amazed what you can do with it. I'm not telling you need duct tape and baling wire, but you might. You know, you have to be creative with that. Another skill is being logical, which many of us are logical, but that's logical in the approach to what we're doing. Logical in the way that you troubleshoot a piece of equipment. You know, there's a logical process to fix that piece of equipment, and equipment is logical. As much as we like to think sometimes it doesn't make any sense, usually when you figure out what's wrong, it made sense. Is that fair to say? Or no? Do you agree with that? Or it's all electronics pretty much, so it's logical. We may not be thinking of it that way. Probably because a lot of us can't read schematics and don't understand that anymore either. Those are more skills that we're missing. Can somebody give me the time?
10:45.
How long we need? Okay. So just let me know when it's like 11 or something. So we have to be creative. We have to troubleshoot it logical. We have to be physical. Physical. What does that mean? Skill set of being physical. How about able to do what you need to do, right? I had a guy lift an II off a P500 room 3 weeks ago and about killed him. I mean, it about killed him. But it's the type of job that he's required to do every day. Right? So you owe it. I mean, you owe it to yourself to be able to do the job that you're doing.
So you're saying that right now it would be difficult for you to do a tube change?
I would kill it. I am saying that, yeah. It would be difficult right now. But I would approach it logically. I would get creative. I'd communicate to somebody how to do it, and then I would manage that process. That's how I would approach that. Last night I wanted to come downstairs I did come downstairs without this because I didn't like the way it looked with my jacket on, right? And I was upstairs in my room and I was like, I have to go. And Lisa's my wife, she said, put on your sling. And I said, no, I'm not putting on the sling. And she said, put on the sling. You're going to go downstairs and somebody's going to come up and backslap you or buddy you or whatever, you know, or you're going to fall or something's going to happen. I'm like, look, I'm a grown man and I'll do whatever I want. And she looked at me and I said, is that okay? So real quick, I had to logically think about that situation, right? Communicate effectively so the rest of my night went well. So these things apply.
So you're saying you wore the sling?
So I got permission not to wear the sling is what I did. Yeah. So that's
How'd that
funny.
work out for you?
And I'll tell you who gave me more problem than my wife without the sling was John Garrett. I thought he was like a bodyguard to me for a while. Like, it's all right. It's all right. Anyway, these come in handy all over the place, right? They really do. Interpersonal skills, you know, something that I feel like has made me fairly adapt at changing my situation is I've always had the technical knowledge and then the ability to communicate to somebody. You know, to spend time in the room or on the phone with an engineer and then go next door and talk to the director about what's going on. That's really important in what we do nowadays. It's really important. All right. So interpersonal skills, organizational skills. Well, you know, I don't know what to say about that. If I go into our lead engineer in CT is Josh Raines. Does anybody know Josh Raines in here? Ever talk to him on the phone? If you haven't and you have a CT problem that's in GE or Toshiba, you should have called him. But his office is a mess. No organizational skills whatsoever. But man, I don't know anybody smarter on the equipment than him. Right? But that works for us, him sitting in his office, but it doesn't work for you guys that are going to all these different sites and have all this different equipment to keep up on. And you got to be organized. And then technical, you have to have the technical knowledge. Any questions on those skills right there? Does anybody want to add anything to them? No? So we have to have a combination of all of those. But look what's here. Rad safety, IT, pneumatics, hydraulics, DICOM. DICOM and networking. Yeah. So networking is a matter of fact, I'd advocate for, before you hire a service engineer, that you come up with some kind of generic test that can test his electronics ability, that can test his equipment ability, just general equipment ability, and then a networking. Because every resume I look at, these guys say they're great at it. You know, a lot of them say they're great at all of these things. Some basic networking, some basics of what we do, you would be amazed. Because general knowledge is much different than the ability to work on a specific piece of equipment. I feel like it is. Being able to broaden that scope and go wherever the problem takes you is a rarity nowadays. It's a rarity. So even rad safety, how do you stay safe around x-rays? How many people do you know that would say to you, you wear a rad badge? Right? I mean, no, you don't wear a rad badge. It measures it. Time, distance, and shielding. Every x-ray engineer should know those three things. It's a basic. It's a basic. Yeah, and then IT, pneumatics or hydraulics, DICOM, networking. What else is on there that isn't? What else? What other types of skills? Physical skills. Mechanical is huge. Mechanical aptitude is huge, right? A ton of your problems are just mechanical problems. So to get those, you bring in all your previous experiences, you know, your symptom recognition. I don't know what the quick check locations is. Not sure. The rest of that makes sense, though. Never repair one fault, leaving the others. Can't help you with that one. Not sure. Other skills, customer service, don't talk tech to the customer. Unless your customer is tech, don't talk tech to your customer. Do you guys ever see them look at you and they just glaze over? Okay, that's what they do, they just glaze over. Talk customer to them. Relate to them wherever they're at. Don't expect people to come to you, right? That's true everywhere, not just here. Perspective. Think about the perspective. Something that makes perfect sense to you doesn't make any sense to somebody else. Is anybody in here married? Anybody? Okay, you know exactly what I mean, right? It's a true statement. It doesn't always make sense. You got to think about the other person. Negotiating. Who would think of negotiation as a skill you would need as a service engineer? Yeah. Who do you negotiate with? Yeah, everybody you come in contact. Time, price, parts, vendors, right? Whether you're going to repair the part, replace the part, it's all a negotiation. Sometimes it comes from a table that tells you what to do, you know. But negotiation is a skill. When you get the piece of equipment to work on, I mean, it's all over the place. All right, the next one is tools. Let's look at some tools. The tools aren't always what you think they are. A lot of times it's not a wrench or it's not a. How many times have you if the OEM walks in and he goes and they put a computer down, they pull out a piece of test equipment and they get on the phone with somebody, right? Yeah. And man, they look like they're doing something. Those guys in there know what they're doing. And then then they get 3 days to work on it, and man, that must have been a tough problem. But if you're in there working on it and you don't get it in a day, what's wrong with you? Do I need to call in the OEM? Well, they have a perception of having all of the tools that they need. And getting on a computer and pulling out a piece of the test equipment and maybe opening a book and getting on the phone, you got to have the tools. So de-escalation of angry customers, that would be a negotiation, or that would be a skill that dealing with the customers, I would think, right? Because they're not really angry at you, right? They're just angry because the equipment's down. They're angry because they're not getting their day's work done. So you have to keep that in mind. All right, measurement, physical tools, measurement equipment. The last one up here is a big one nowadays, software. Having the software to work on the system can be a difficult thing nowadays. Which leads us back to needing or to having that hero kit that we talked about in the beginning sometimes. If you don't have the software to to figure out exactly what's going wrong, there may be 2 or 3 different things that you have to get at it. And if you have good record of what's been done on this equipment or of this equipment, like in your facility where you have so many different pieces, all that data comes together and you can have a pretty good idea of what's wrong with the system before you ever go to it, right? And you can have parts shipped out there to work on that or to at least get the top 5 things or whatever it is that could have been wrong or caused by that error. That can be a struggle for some of us in smaller ones, but your bigger organizations that do take all that data in and shift through it. That's what these data guys now, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to pull logs, this remote monitoring, you know. It's not so much to that remote, it's remote monitoring, not remote diagnostics. They're figuring out how to get in there and pull all the logs and all the information off of the computer that they can get, and then their algorithms are just parsing through it to find the information that could indicate things that are going wrong or what is wrong with it now. Does that make sense? It's a good idea. People have been trying to do it for a long time. I mean, it's important. Does anybody use remote monitoring at all? Nobody? It's going to be a big deal real quick. Anybody have problems getting software?
Yeah.
Yes. You get it from your buddies, probably not going to get it from the OEM though, right?
Yeah. The dongle and everything. Stuff can fill up like that. That you need to actually access the system.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, without it.
So we're supposed to have a right to do our first troubleshooting. We're supposed to have a right to documentation, basically, right? Especially, so there's a big push now for OEMs, I don't know if you guys are aware of it, but to kind of shut us out from servicing the equipment, saying that we're not doing as good of a job as they are. Well,
they can give you the documentation, but if you don't have the key to get into the system, to even utilize the documentation, you still have.
Yeah, and this is a big deal right now. It's a huge conversation, and it's a whole nother topic, and it's taking up a lot of time right now. But I can tell you that we're going to lose that battle unless everybody gets involved in it. Because there's a few people that are fighting it, and it's going through Congress. And the problem is when you say something to them like, yeah, we can't have, when somebody says to Congress, we can't have these in-house guys and these unqualified people working on this equipment because that's causing a problem with patient safety and people are going to get hurt. Well, if you listen to that generically, that sounds like a very valid argument, doesn't it? It does. And so these people, these senators and all of these people that are saying, yeah, that makes perfect sense. We need to put a law in place against that. We know that's not the whole conversation, but I'm telling you, we have discussions on that in roundtables all the time.
Well, and there's somewhat of a misconception out there too with that some people think that it's just that they're targeting third-party service and independent service organizations, and they're not. This is going right down to the in-house level.
Absolutely.
They're saying that the in-house techs don't have the capabilities as well. So it's impacting everything except manufacturer service levels.
That's
it's
right.
running through the whole gambit.
And we're saying, you don't have the software. You got to give us the keys and everything so that we can. And you got to train us so that we can work to the level you can. And they're saying no, because you can't do that. You're not us. And they're winning that battle. So just, especially for people like the service organ, the smaller, actually you guys too now.
They're winning the battle without factual information.
For sure.
They don't have any factual information that patients have been, any substantial information that patients have been hurt by organizations servicing equipment in-house or.
I mean, they rely on us. The OEMs rely on us to help them do this service all over the country. They rely on us. They cannot do it without us. But on the other side, they are fighting us to prevent us from doing it. I forget that guy's name. It's with.
There's a couple organizations pushing it. MIDA, Advamed. So I'm a voting member on the whole thing that's going on with MIDA, with Peter Weems and MIDA.
Who is Peter Williams? Who's the attorney that goes up there? There's an attorney that works for another group that's up there, trying to help us out. But we're losing that battle. I feel like he's the only one that's really doing it. You know, somebody who's in the Dave Francoeur. Anybody know Dave Francoeur? He's really. Oh, did he give that talk yesterday about it? Yeah. Oh, perfect. Yeah. He's really knee deep on that too. It's a big deal though, right?
Yes.
About the tools. Now, GE will give you the documentation, and if anybody worked on GECTs, that if you replace a tube that's not from GE, then all the information that sent the packs come to the bottom and would say GE is not, you know.
This tube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, still, you know it doesn't affect the output.
That's a mental game. They're just doing that for the customer.
That mental game works.
Yeah.
If there's more than that, some of them, it will shut off certain features as well.
So GE's been pretty open about giving you all access to their documentation and allowing you to work on their new systems are going to that same type of key system that Philips is using, and you're not going to get in those. You're going to have to get access from them. I don't know anybody that's going to get into that right away. Somebody will eventually, but that'll never be common software that you can just get because it's you're not allowed to have it. I mean,
the AIT regs, FDA regs for access to that stuff. If you beat on regulatory, you'll usually have good luck.
I don't disagree with that, but so if you beat on regulatory and you get it, the other 99% of the people don't have it. It's like they have to one by one beat on somebody to get it. That's the whole problem. Independent companies like y'all back there, I know for sure, you don't have what it takes to beat on them to get that information. You got to find a buddy that has a key or will generate a key for you, and you have to make sure it's a one-day key so that you don't get in trouble. And you know what I'm saying? I mean, I know that game, but we all need to have access to that stuff.
Well, the problem, some of the other issue that bothers me is they're talking out of both sides of their mouth.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they're talking out of this side, but yet they're doing multi-vendor service on this side. So
that's exactly what I'm saying. They don't even talk to each other. They don't even know, because if they do this, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. They're going to be in a lot of trouble too. We're killing them here.
If the argument that, well, a lot of us out here are ex-OEM from one OEM or the other. Are you saying that your people aren't qualified either? I mean, what's the difference? You're wearing your badge or you're not wearing your badge?
It's a crazy battle that we're fighting. So physical tools are going to build trust and confidence in the customer or not if you don't have them. Physical tools are just the regular things you need to work on the equipment. We have people call us all the time to borrow our rad count. Service companies calling us to borrow a rad count. Like, okay, I get it. It's an expensive piece of test equipment, but you need it to do your job. You know, so the types of physical tools that you need to have. Don't scrimp on that. It doesn't build confidence when you go in there and you don't have something like that.
and it doesn't help our stance on what we were just talking about either.
No, it doesn't. It just proves the point. You got to remember, you're going to have to deal with change. That's the one thing that's constant, and it's continually changing on us. You just got to continually fight it, right? It is continually changing. We went from analog, now we're at digital, and now we're fighting just to be able to work on this stuff. All right, your abilities. Apply the knowledge to the current situation. You've done all of this stuff. You've been out in the field. You've done all this work. Apply that to what you currently see, the current situation that you're in. All right, apply it to the current situation. Common or complex failure, that's a hard one until you kind of get into it. Abilities, cognitive learning is something that I say is one of the most important things that you can find in your engineers. The ability to take situations that they've had even in life and apply it to what they're doing right now. You know, your mechanical skills of learning how to put brakes on your car is a mechanical skill for doing something in the overhead on a rad room or whatever. Troubleshooting skills. Troubleshooting is a logical process. If you don't have a logical process for troubleshooting, you should develop one internally and let your engineers use it and correct it as they go. Get better and better at it. Attitude and customer service, again, that keeps coming up because, man, that's important. That's more important, I don't know, as important as fixing the equipment. Humility. Don't try to fix the flux capacitor if you don't know how it works. Okay, gather as much information prior to leaving. OEM models. What does this go back to? Something that we talked about earlier. That relationship with the customer on site. Being able to talk to them about what's going on and getting more information so that when you go, you can be more accurate in your diagnosis and fixing the equipment. I just can't tell you how important it is. You got to have good faith when you go to the customer. You have to be able to keep good faith with them. So know what OEM, error codes, previous issues are going on with the system. If it's your system, you know, these ongoing problems, this all goes back to you guys collecting that data. humility. We're all very humble people. So walk in the door ready for anything, but have suspects lined up. I think that goes back to knowing what's going on before you get there if possible. Train customer service and admin staff to take care of things that are basic. A lot of times, if you can't be there right away and you can teach them some basics and they're willing to do it, they actually feel good about it too. The fact that they actually were able to fix something without calling you because they knew to, shut the system down normally, bring it back up, hit F3 and let it go. Create system or document what's going on, an internal system, which a lot of you guys do now, but a lot of these smaller organizations don't. Document what's going on and have a system for it. Be ready for it's broke. That's one of the biggest things you used to hear a lot. It's broke. Can you come look at it? It's broke. What's it doing? I don't know. It's just not working. Normally it works. This is a big one. Don't give your customers false hope. Yeah, I'll be back tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow. Be honest with them, straightforward. But even better than that, you got to be able to fix it. To be honest, nowadays you have to be able to fix it. If you don't know, say so and get some help. So if you're taking service in-house here, there's two ways to do it. You can get your toes wet, or you can jump all the way in. Some people go both ways. I recommend probably getting your toes wet. Take on a modality or a manufacturer at a time that's easy. The first thing I learned in this industry was ultrasound. The second thing I learned in this industry was mammo, because I had a whole X-ray generator in one small package, right? And then from that, I went on to other things. But for me, that was a very easy way of learning it. I had it all together, so then you could go to C-arms. Resources. So you have support. You have tech support, parts, documentation, networking, admin. Resources are really important to you. Everybody knows they are. Everybody has a hard drive, right? Everybody has a hard drive that has information on it that they use. And when they find out something new, they put it on that hard drive. When they see a buddy of theirs, he takes that too. It's all legal. We don't do anything that we're not supposed to have. I'm not promoting that. Right? Tech support is a big deal. Have somebody you can call, like I was talking about calling Josh for GECT. You may have a buddy that you call for this. I had somebody I called the other day for a Phillips question. Have somebody you can rely on, somebody that gets back to you and doesn't wait until tomorrow. And then do the same for them when they get a hold of you. Documentation, that goes back to that hard drive. Sometimes it's hard to do anything anymore without some documentation. And sometimes the documentation is hard to get. Networking is people, administration, or admin resources. If you're the engineer and you're doing all the background work too, that's a hard way to succeed, right? It's a hard way to succeed. Engineers are required to do more and more paperwork now than they were in the past, right? You have to have all your reports, but all of that stuff needs to be in a format that it can be accomplished simply. These are just some costs. We even have, you can even have independent service organizations that help you in-house when you need it, right? You don't necessarily have to go to the OEM. You have local organizations that help you out. I don't know if is that $40 an hour for an in-house? Is that realistic? That's probably the least, the point of the slide is it's the least expensive way to service the equipment most of the time. Most of the time. The things that people don't want to take off of contract are things like, you don't take a CT off. Why would you not take a CT off of contract? There's really only one reason. What is it? If you think of the cost of all of it, it's going to be the tube. If the CT tube can be had at a reasonable price, it's probably worth taking it off contract. So you have to look at getting somebody trained is not that hard anymore. It's the cost of the tube and CT. I think that's how I see it. Don't be afraid to ask for help. If you don't know how to repair or replace something, that's something that I did. It was like, I think somebody else calls them like jump teams. Intermed or something has these jump teams or something that they'll send out to just replace a part that's already been diagnosed as being bad. So if you guys can diagnose it but don't want to take the risk, let's say, on replacing it, or don't have the technical expertise to replace it, just call somebody in to do that. Even that's less than calling somebody in to troubleshoot and replace. Things don't have to be on full coverage contracts all the time. your goal should be to lower those contracts to where you're taking it in-house, or even a tech support. I was talking to somebody yesterday that said they can't get rid of their contracts because their contract says they can't get rid of their contracts. That's kind of a strange thing, but that's what they said. So what they're doing is they went from a full coverage contract down to a partial coverage, and now they're actually all the way down to a support. But they still have, it's the least expensive of contracts for them to have, so they kept it, and they're servicing it in-house, and they're doing very well with it. Research in advance before you do that, and make sure you know who's helping you or who is there to help you, who can help you. Even providers from out of state can meet the need considering the timing of, yeah, I mean, well, we get parts overnight now, right? I mean, we ship until 8 o'clock at night. So. Know your training options. Training's a big one. It goes back to the knowledge thing. One of the ways you get your knowledge is through training. So know your training options. Some of you guys, if you're in-house, will qualify for OEM training. If you're not in-house, you probably won't get OEM training. Unless you're like a, Trimedics or something maybe. Do you guys get OEM training? You probably do.
Yeah, we're in-house.
You're in-house all the way, yeah. So it can be hard to get OEM training, but honestly, is OEM training the best route for you? Not always. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. You know, I know a number of people that have gone to OEM schools so they can learn how to call the OEM for help. It's because it's different out here in the real world. I don't want to say the real world. It's different out there when you actually have to fix the equipment, and you have to fix it now, than when you can call somebody. Because let me use GE for example. They're even spreading out thinner. And the engineer that they send over to you when you call in for I don't know, you got P500 down or something, he may have no experience on an R&F room, but you're still paying that guy $500 an hour or whatever it is, because he's there on site and he's the OEM. So that's just something to think about. The second one, create a model to understand the ROI. The model that we're talking about is to train somebody versus the return on investment that you'll get when they go back to the facility. This is really important, and it's really important in the training that you select to ensure that that's going to be able to happen. You don't want to send somebody to training and they have to come back and shadow somebody for the next 6 months before they can do anything. So, and it's easy. Look at the cost. You have the documentation. Figure out what it's cost you, how much an engineer is going to fix you. Even a first call engineer, somebody that can go do first look, is going to be considerable for you. Ask for what you need. You know, if you just need a class on certain things, ask for it. A lot of training companies out there, they can customize what you need, right? I mean, you just got to pay for it. Which really is not a big. This is a good example. If you overpaid for a class because you needed to get a guy there to learn how to change tubes and calibrate a CT, I mean, that pays for itself in one tube replacement, no matter what they charge you, because they're not going to, not no matter what, but within reason. We used to charge people $10,000 to go out and replace a tube on their CT. $10,000. Sounds like a lot of money, right? You'll never pay that for training on that system. I'm just saying. So another resource are all these retired engineers that we're talking about. I just had one contact me the other day, retired from GE, and wanted to know if he could give me his services to come in and do a training class for us when we needed it on specific GE equipment. So he's retired, but he'd be happy to come in and provide training on that course. I mean, we've talked about you guys coming out, and which we're going to talk about more, you guys coming out and providing training on different subjects to our students that are coming through. There's a lot of resources out there that you can draw on. Not that you're retired or anything, but I mean, skill sets is where I was talking about you. Skill sets.
My hope up.
We wish we were. Know where you can purchase all of these things, OEM, aftermarkets. Know who your vendors are. There's plenty of vendors out there. Choose a quality one. I mean, I don't have to preach this one, I think. Look, you get people that are honest and do honest business. That's what I like to say. Get honest people that do honest business. That doesn't mean they're going to get everything 100% right, but it should be pretty close, right? You know they're trying to do that. And that isn't the case all the time. Establish an approval process that ensures all your options have been vetted on high-cost parts. Why do I say that? Because in our industry, it's still not uncommon for an engineer to call somebody to get a part just because that's their buddy Joe that they know from 20 years ago. And they, even when a corporate environment dictates that they should do it a different way, that happens a lot now. I know, because we're a parts company, right? So make sure that stuff these high cost items are vetted so that they're sourced properly is what I would say. And last, to be successful, you have to empower your engineer and yourself. So that doesn't matter whether you're a small company or a large company. You got to let the engineer do what the engineer does, and you got to support them so that they can do what they need to do. Does that make sense? All right, that's all I have. You don't have any questions? You guys are really quiet. Really quiet. What time is it?
7:15.
Perfect. All right. No questions, no comments? All right, well, look, come see us. We're in I don't know what booth we're in, really. 311. We're in 311, I think, at Tri-Imaging. And be happy to talk to you. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you.